Welcome to the Commander's Journey, a journey for new Commander players ready to uncover their hidden magic potential.
Welcome back. I'm Joel.
And I'm Alex.
And here we are. This is the first time we're using some video. So forgive us if it's laggy and delayy. We're just we got to get used to this. Trying to lower the amount of time it takes to do editing. So one take, we get a deck tech, we send it out. But yeah, today we're doing a deck tech on Kaza, Roil Chaser. And this is one you built, Alex, I think a little while ago, right?
Yeah, I built this rug. I want to shoot for a sunset like deck tech every set we get, and Commander Legends at least kind of snuck up on me. I don't know if it did to you, Joel, but our shooting schedule had trouble fitting that in. But I did build the deck, so we said, hey, we're getting near the holidays, perfect time to release it. It's still somewhat relevant. Exciting stuff. So we're taking a pause from Legends, focusing back on Expeditions, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and this is really our first Izzet deck tech. I think with all the techs we've been doing, we're trying to hit all the color pairings and all the different styles. This is a fun one too. I think I played against you on this a few times. I think it really gets rolling. No pun intended. uh, but like always, we're gonna go over what the game plan is, and then all the best synergies. We like to build these decks to have a lot of synergies. So let's talk about the game plan. What is the game plan for Kaza for you?
Yeah, so Kaza's a interesting one. She's definitely an A to B mechanic commander, which means you got to get some wizards in there and you got to get some instants and sorceries, right? The deck does not play as well if you get too flooded one way or the other, and even as it is, you'll notice sometimes it leans one way or the other, and you're kind of evening it out with card draw to mitigate that. So there's definitely a style of play with this that's very unique. But in general, the game plan is to outvalue your opponents. You will have no issues in terms of casting instant sorceries on the cheap with this deck. Pretty much the game plan after that is to copy spell effects and go wide with wizards. You can definitely win with combat damage with wizards in this. And this is the kind of deck, if you like to take some really big plays in a turn, this is the deck for that. I know I wasn't with you, Joel, but I did test out this deck a number of different places. And one game I had, in one turn alone, I drew 30-something cards and had infinite hand size times 3 from 3 different effects. I
Nice.
had no issues on the infinite hand size.
As many cards as you want. So let's read Kaza as she is Kaza Royal Chaser for a blue and a red legendary creature human wizard with flying and haste, and you tap her. And the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn costs X less to cast, where X is the number of wizards you control as this ability resolves, and it's a 1/2.
Yeah, so Kaza is pretty much playing that strategy of, instants instants and sorcery. Sorry, are going to be lowered. Make them cheaper for the number of wizards you control. So you can kind of see how the A to B mechanics come into play with her. It is nice she has haste that is extremely relevant. The flying even is extremely relevant to sneak in for a couple extra damage. Or to block even a flyer I've jumped with her already. And then what's really cool is just her ability. You can use it immediately because of haste, and you can lower the cost. And there's sometimes where you can, you'll be lowering the cost by 4 or 5 very easily after a couple turns. It'll start showing up.
So the A to B, you're talking about having like wizards as plan A and plan B is like all the instants and sorceries. And is there like a balance to that, or you just have to find it per deck, or is there kind of like a template?
There's definitely I have because it changes depending on the mechanics. Some mechanics are heavily weighted for one side or the other. I was even trying to find the balance quite a bit with this deck. I don't know if you have even hit it with this deck tech. I just know that it doesn't have a lot of the same issues a lot of other decks would have with an A to B mechanic because it has so much card draw in red and blue. It really you can kind of draw your way out of any kind of shaky scenario or iffy start. and then kind of just take over the game. You're definitely, your limitations are less so what your opponents are doing to you to slow down, and more so how well the A to B plays together, and how much you have to mitigate it.
Nice. So let's talk about some of the best game plan cards in the deck. So let's start with a Fetal Alchemist, one in a blue for a creature wizard. You tap it and you untap a target artifact or creature, and it's got morph for one blue, which means you can play it face down. It's a 2/2, and for 3 generic, you can turn it up face up for its morph cost. It's a 1/2.
Yeah, so this is a fantastic card in the deck. Most of the time, you're going to be using it on Kaza, but you can use it for other wizards as well, which may be relevant. A lot of them have tap abilities. But even with just looking at the commander alone, you can use this to double the amount of colorless mana you would get for an instance or sorceries to really make those X spells are beefy.
Nice. The next card here you have is Metallurgic Summonings for 3 blue and a blue for an enchantment. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token where X is that spell's converted mana cost. For 3 blue and a blue, exile Metallurgic Summonings. Return all instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only if you control 6 or more artifacts.
Yeah, so this card is really a perfect example of rewarding you for going wide by playing instants and sorcery. So every time you get an instant sorcery, you'll get something big out that will help put pressure on the opponent, so you can switch between these damage dealing, high power instants and sorceries, and converting them into actual big creatures on the board. So you're not really giving up one for the other. You get a little bit of everything. And I do want to point out too, I noticed, I didn't realize this when we were putting it together, but this is the Kaladesh remastered version of Metallurgic Summoning. So this is the arena art for it, which is why it's a little interesting like that.
Nice. I was wondering why the art was a little bit funny. There's another one in here, I think, where the words on it are funny too.
It might be the same thing.
Be printed. The next card in your game plan is a looks like a double-sided one. It's Docent of Perfection. On the front side is 3 a blue and a blue for a creature insect horror with flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token onto the battlefield. Then if you control 3 or more wizards, you transform Docent of Perfection. It's a 5/4. And when it flips and transforms, it turns into Final Iteration, which is a creature Eldrazi insect with flying. Wizards you control get +2/+1 and have flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token onto the battlefield. And it's a 6/5.
Yeah, so what's fantastic about this is mainly the fact this makes more wizards. It allows Kaza to, really lower the cost of those instants of sorceries. It rewards you. The more you play instants of sorceries, the more wizards you're going to get, which are going to make those instants of sorceries cheaper. This alone in Kaza pretty much fuels the deck. And what's really nice about it, when it does transform, which is very easy to do because you'll probably hit it, honestly, as soon as possible because there's so many wizards in the deck. They all get flying, which is it's very relevant. I've won with combat damage with this deck once or twice, even though it's wizards. This card helped me do it. And so a lot of this card is all good stuff for the deck.
That's nice. Yeah, because you might not have all your wizards in there to be big, beefy bodies as well, but this adds that, right? Because you do have a lot of wizards, and instant sorcerers just do really good stuff. So it's always good to have a few big bodies in your deck, no matter what your strategy. And the last card you have in your game plan I want to talk about is Double Vision. It's a great card. 3 red and red for an enchantment. It says whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you copy that spell. And you may choose new targets for the copy.
Yeah, so Double Vision is a lot of this deck will be copying the instants and sorceries, and really laying into your opponents that way. Really, that's how you get effects there. You draw so many ridiculous amounts of cards in this deck, that kind of thing. This is nice, and I liked it too. It was one of the newer cards. It really fits in with the theme of the deck. It's an enchantment, so it's a little more protected. It's just a nice fit. And it definitely helps out with the general deck strategy.
There you go. So our second category, let's talk about some of our best synergistic game plan cards. So our best ramp cards, our best synergistic ramp in the deck. The first card here is Omni spell Adept. It's 4 and a blue for a creature, human, wizard, and for 2 and a blue and tapping it, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. It's a 3/4. So everything,
Yeah,
all your instant sorceries cost 3 basically.
all of them cost 3 and tapping the Omnispell Adept. Talk about ramp. You know, Kaza already provides so much ramp in the deck. Sometimes you don't even need this. But it's definitely nice, especially in the early game, to get this out. You can really start threatening your opponents with some ridiculous instants or sorceries, or even just the potential that you have when if you have the mana up, they don't know what's going to happen. So it's really a fantastic card, and is a little on the newer side, being from I believe Ravnica Legions. It might be from Guilds, but it's pretty snazzy. I really like this effect, and it really fits in well with the deck.
Next card here you have is a goodie. It's Primal Amulet for 4 generic. It's an artifact. It says instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Primal Amulet. Then if there are 4 more charge counters on it, you may remove those counters and transform it. And it turns into a land, which you can tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. When that mana is spent to cast an instant sorcery spell, copy that spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy.
So clean away the copy of the spell, lowers the mana cost early, becomes a free copy effect later. Again, a lot of what the deck wants to do. It's really a fantastic ramp spell where it's ramp early, it's copying late. It's a lot of what the deck wants to do.
Definitely great for spell slinging right there. And also we have Barrel, Chief of Compliance, 1 and a blue legendary creature, human wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast, and whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do discard a card, it's a 1/3.
So what's nice is it's a cheap wizard, so it helps for that count, and it lowers the cost of instant sorceries by an additional 1. That's actually the main reason why Baral's in the deck. The additional thing with the counter spells does come up. It does have a few counter spells in the deck, though it's not as crazy particular as that other ability is. It's just the fact that it's a wizard that lowers the cost of instant sorcery spells, and it's cheap. It's only 2 mana, so it really helps it out.
An occasional card draw is never something to look
It's not a bad deal. There's enough spell recursion in the deck too that you could discard a spell card, have it become relevant later.
Speaking of card draw, let's get to our card draw synergies for this deck. And let's first look at Riptide Director. For 2 blue, it's a creature wizard, and for 2 blue and tapping it, you draw a card for each wizard you control, and it's a 2/3.
So especially with those wizard tokens, this can, 4 mana for 4 cards, 4 mana for 8 cards. This stacks really well with the deck. It's definitely one of those things that when you're kind of start pivoting to a good position on the board, you can really help hold that by putting so many cards in your hand that you can defend yourself easier.
And it's a wizard.
And it's a wizard.
Makes it cheaper. We also have Finale of Revelation. For X blue and a blue, it's a sorcery. It says draw X cards. If X is 10 or more, instead shuffle your graveyard into your library, draw X cards, untap up to 5 lands, and you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Exile Finale of Revelation.
Finale of Revelation is fantastic for the deck, and often Kaza alone will, with the other wizards in play, can lower the cost of the spell to hit that 10 pretty quickly. One of the games I played, in fact, the one I think I got to 34 cards in hand. I think I did this, copied it twice, so 3 total finales going off. It was a little scary. I did some working around to actually make that happen, but it was very powerful. And it goes to show, and it paid for itself for the most part because it untapped the lands as well. So, it was just one of those things. All of a sudden, you get to pretty much cast Finale of Revelation for a bunch of card draw, and then you untap all your lands, and then you're just off to the races at that point. You're living the good life.
And yet another War of the Spark finale that has some good play.
Yeah.
Those finales in that set were really good. And I've not played this card yet. I have not put that in any deck. I got to try that out.
Yeah, the finales I think are a little underplayed.
Let's also look at Azami, Lady of Scrolls for 2 blue. It's a legendary creature, human wizard. You tap an untapped wizard you control to draw a card, and it's a 0/2.
Azami's great. It's clean. It's a wizard. It makes other
Hmm.
wizards tap to draw cards. If you ever have a bunch of untapped wizards at the end of your turn, you can take advantage of it. This deck really takes advantage of all its pieces when it gets going,
Mm.
and Azami's a great example of
It's funny you said a zombie, and I thought you were saying a zombie at the beginning.
that.
She doesn't quite look like a zombie though. So that's our synergy card draw spells. And as far as synergy in this deck goes, let's also look at a card for single target removal, the one that is synergistic with the game plan. And that is a Shatter Skull Smashing. It's a sorcery. It's one of these new modal face cards, I believe. These double
Yeah.
sided. Shatter Skull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose among up to two target creatures and/or planeswalkers. If X is six or more, Shatter Skull Smashing deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. And you can play it like that as a sorcery, or you can play it as a land. And if it's a land, it comes in a Shatter Skull, the Hammer Pass. It's a land. It enters the battlefield. You can pay 3 life, and if you don't, it enters tapped, and it taps for a 1 red mana. So this is either a sorcery or a land, depending on how you play it.
Yeah. This card especially is great for the deck. It's an X spell, which is very relevant. It will often remove a lot of things. Take out a bunch of creatures, a bunch of planeswalkers. It's a nice removal spell in the deck. And I also brought it up too because I wanted to talk about this deck, especially because I intended it to be the Sunset deck. Really showed and took advantage of the cards that were, a spell or a creature on one side
Mm.
and then a land on the other. Um, the deck was built with that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you notice, there's less lands in here than in the average deck. It's not quite true because a lot of them are dual faced with something on the other side, and that's the one they saved. So it still has 37 lands, except a lot of those lands are these other lands that have something on the other side. And the deck shows the power level of these cards very well. You'll see as you play it. It just, as long as you're not afraid to play the land side when you need it, these are some very powerful effects because of just having more options.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect time, even though we wanted to release this earlier, because we're not too far away. Already seeing some, not spoilers, but what do they call them? Leaks for Kaldheim, and I think they're supposed to
Yeah.
do more these double modal card. These modal, what do they call them? Modal face, double modal.
Yeah, actually, I don't think it's even a
I'm
leak. I think it's
butchering
an
it.
actual. I think it's an
No, no,
actual.
yeah, that's actual. But I'm saying there's just so
Yes,
many
there
leaks
are others.
going
Yeah,
on with Kaldheim, but
let's skip over those. Yeah,
exactly. But anyway, these double cards are so valuable. Like it takes up a land slot, but it's also a really powerful sorcery that is very synergistic in this case. So um, always look out for that. So other synergy with board wipes. So we have one board wipe here. Um, Immolating Gyre for 4 red. It's a sorcery. Immolating Gyre deals X damage to each creature and planeswalker you don't control, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard.
yeah. This is an end game, nice, clean board wipe.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can even manipulate a little bit the cards, instants and sorceries in your graveyard to hit what you want. You can pull some out of there if you have a little too many. You can burn some free instants and sorceries to make it a little more to hit your target here. And this is just a very powerful effect, and you'll see as you play it in the deck. It's one of your go-to board wipes, especially because you can avoid certain some of your
Mm.
guys and take out some of theirs.
Yeah, the one-sided burn right there. Yeah, you could do so much. Do that and then do your big plays and win the game.
Well, exactly. And you can play politics with it too, right? So it doesn't hit your
Yeah,
stuff, it'll hit theirs, but you can, keep someone else's alive, or maybe something's helping you out by chance and you can, adjust it as needed.
there you go. Let's also talk about the next category, which is our best synergistic recursion and protection cards. So let's first take a look here at Mystic Retrieval for 3 and a blue. It's a sorcery. You return target instant sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. And it's also got flashback. So for 2 and a red, you can play this out of your graveyard.
Perfect recursion card. You get to use it twice, which is a big deal in the deck. I copied this a number of times to pull quite a number of instant sorceries out, and then you still have it there for a flashback for later when you need it. I've done stuff with this deck where, you know, you turn what should be one burn spell into 6 burn spells by a combination of this card and another 2 copy effects, right? So you're never out of it with this deck, and this is a good example of that.
Yeah, just play it right out of your graveyard just to get a little bit more card advantages if you needed it in this deck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The next card here, let's talk about Riptide Laboratory. It is a land. You tap it to add 1 to your mana pool, and for 1 in a blue, you can tap it to return target wizard you control to its owner's hand.
Yeah, you know, and this is a good example of the protection in this deck, you know, because we don't have green, we don't have white. A lot of the protection comes from, you know, self-bounce with blue or something like that, or the ability just to get it back later if you need it, you know, with some other effects. This is a nice example. If it's attached to a land, so it asks very little of the deck, but you can, you know, save a wizard that's pertinent to your strategy in a scary situation. Often that won't be Kaza, because Kaza is so cheap, you can generally replay her from the command zone a number of times in a game. But for Riptide Laboratory, you know, you could save that critical wizard that's helping out the strategy, such as when we did the Docent of Perfection, right? That helps out the deck so much. You could save that real quick. Everything else gets wiped, and then you still have that to just get right back into it with a cheap Kaza replay.
Very nice. So obviously you have a lot of wizards, you have a lot of spells. You're going to be doing slinging and doing a lot of damage and controlling the board a bit. But what is an alternate win con that you have in this deck?
Yeah, so you know, the main alt win con of the deck, it's not the game plan, but I've fallen to it now a couple of times, so maybe it should be. But you can just burn out your opponent.
Yeah, you did that opponents. To me. You did that to me.
I did. If I remember,
I think you hit Comet Storm and started multiplying it a few times.
I think we just got to a point, Joel, where I'm like, man, you're stopping everything I want to do. I just gotta default to burn, and boy, does this deck do that pretty well too.
Awesome. And then another topic you like to cover in all these deck techs is some weaknesses to the deck itself. Some you build in, and some just because of the color pairing and the strategy are just natural.
So there's a number of them for this deck. All of them are a little more niche, but definitely hurt the deck, and you'll kind of see when you play it. You kind of have to work your way around it. Usually you're going to card draw your way around it. But stuff like repeated board wipes, again, this deck really relies on go wide with your wizards. And so if they're continuously board wiping, you're not going to be able to make your instant sorcerers cheaper. You're going to be playing full cost for them. It's going to really hurt your game plan. This deck can rebuild, you know, once, maybe twice. 3 or 4 times you're going to run into trouble. So, you know, if you're a metagame that has a lot of board wipes in it, like sometimes ours does, you know, maybe hold back on some of your key wizards till you know you're a little safer. Another one is Kaza is extremely important. The deck really works as intended with her out. It helps bridge the gap between those wizards and those instants and sorceries. Without it, it's just a bunch of good creatures that are wizards, and then a bunch of good instants and sorceries that are way too expensive. She helps bridge that gap. It makes the whole thing cohesive. So if they're aiming for her a lot, she's a little under the radar just based on her size. But if, you know, people figure out the deck, they'll probably deal with her. And then the last one is beefy hexproofers. If you can't, you know, hit them with our number of wizards, because wizards have low power or in low toughness, you know, they have a big creature. You know, your solution at that point is to burn it. And then if they have hexproof, you can't do that anymore. So those beefy hexproofers, as I said, make it a lot harder.
The beefy hexproofer. I love it. And then some upgrades possibly for the deck if people want to add a little bit of money, right?
Yeah. One of them is Valikute. Valikute 2 is just a fantastic card. It's also like $25, $30. It just makes the deck way better if you could throw it in. But it's also a land for $30. So didn't throw it in. If you happen to have one,
you got one in your as a box topper, you know.
Yeah.
And then we also have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, great card, especially for ramp.
Yeah.
When you're not in colors, you can typically ramp in.
And that's exactly why it's here. And we have a lot of pips on our spells and on our creatures in this deck. Wizards, by chance, have a lot of those. So it doesn't weaken it so much having 2 colors in the deck. If anything, you have a surprising amount of pips of whatever color you want. So you can often, nick those for a very high amount, even in a 2-color deck in this deck.
Very nice. And we also have Soulfire Eruption.
Yeah, so this is an example of, I built the deck when Zendikar Rising was out. I did not update it really for Commander Legends, but when me and Joel were talking, we were like, what if we just quickly in the upgrades guide threw in some cards, easy upgrades, that we would add in and maybe take some stuff out if we were going to build the Kaza deck, if we're going to make those adjustments as needed. And so instead of trying to figure that out the last second, we're throwing them in right now. Soulfire Eruption is probably the card I would most, out of Commander Legends, force in the deck. I definitely think it will hold its own and be worth the slot. So what I take out, I'm not quite sure, but if you have one, you maybe figure out what's not pulling its weight. Maybe an extra. I have a lot of doubling effects. Maybe we can take out one and maybe throw Soulfire Eruption in there.
The big spell. It definitely is. And then also from Commander Legends, Mnemonic Deluge, 6 blue. This one exiles target instant sorcery card from a graveyard, and you copy it 3 times. You cast that copy without paying the mana cost. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's a little scary. But this is another one. It's an extra copy effect. I don't know how much you need it. The main advantage is you can play, use more stuff from the graveyard. This is one where, had I built this after Legends came out, I would have tested this card quite a bit in the deck, see if it was worth running or not. Honestly, this is a big question mark. I don't know if it's worth it or not to put Mnemonic Deluge in the deck. It really might not be. It might be fantastic. I really cannot tell. So I throw it in at your own discretion. Play with it a bit, see if it's hold its weight. Honestly, throw it in the comments. Let me know if it was a good choice or if I should have just left it out and not mentioned it, because I'm curious. It's one of those ones that could be very swingy or just be a dead card in hand that you are sad it's there.
It's expensive, but if you can copy the right spell 3 times, like a really big burn spell or something crazy, it could be game ending too. So it's a big spell. Okay, there you go. That will do it. That was Kaza, and that was our deck tech, our sunset deck tech from which set was that?
Zendikar Rising forever
ago. We got so much coming up. I know Christmas is around the corner. We're probably gonna take a little break. We really appreciate you guys listening to us, and hopefully this video comes out and it's not too laggy, and we'll just post it as is. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. We're going to go ahead and get some more deck techs coming around the corner as soon as we can. I hope everybody has a safe and wonderful Christmas. Please subscribe and like if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up. Follow us. Leave some comments below. If you guys have any ideas, suggestions about this tech or about other shows we do, we really appreciate hearing from you guys. You there, Alex?
Oh yes, I seem to have flagged out for half
did
a
you
second.
freeze? Or you were playing? You were playing into the bit, make it seem
the
like
fun of video. We can't hide that. It's all good. No, I was I lost you for a second there, but yeah, if you are thinking about maybe buying any Magic cards this holiday season, do us a favor and use our affiliate link. We are a tiny channel. So anything honestly really helps us out. We really appreciate it. And I want you guys all to know that. So if you're thinking about it this year, you're like, hey, I'm going to get some Magic cards. Maybe, I like the Commander's Journey. I like their content. Help us out. We would appreciate it. And if you don't, we understand. But if you do, it would be fantastic.
If you don't, get on board. Start liking.
I hope if they stuck around this one that long they liked us.
There you go. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time.
See ya. Bye.